my great privilege to introduce Anthony Giles, the former Assistant Deputy Minister of Labour Program of the Employment and Social Development Canada, and a person with a very keen interest in the work that you are doing as an assembly. So welcome, Anthony. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, Richard, and good morning, everyone. Thanks to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to kick off day 2 for you. But most of all, a huge thank you to all of the participants in what I consider an incredibly innovative and important initiative. What I want to do this morning in just a few minutes is tell you why I think what you're doing and the energy and time you're investing in it is very worthwhile. You'll remember at the first session, Lisa Raitt kicked things off by talking about how as an ex-Minister of Labour, she thought it was important. What I'm going to do is say, as an ex-civil servant responsible for labor policy, why from that perspective, I think what you're doing is very important. So I spent more than 15 years giving advice to federal labor ministers on a range of issues. And I have to tell you that in all those 15 years and the 7 or 8 labor ministers I dealt with, not a single one raised the issue of workplace democracy, workers' voice, or the decline in collective representation of unionization. They were interested in a whole lot of workplace issues, sexual harassment, work-life balance, what to do about work stoppages, and so on. And we would sometimes put before them what we thought were policy issues of importance, and we would always include workers' voice and the decline of unionization, but there was never any take-up. So the first reason why I think what you're doing is really important is to get this issue on the map, to get it discussed, to bring it to the attention of politicians and others so that it becomes a salient issue that people want to address. I'll tell you, in my experience, politicians pay attention to what people are talking about. And so my advice is make as much noise as you can about this issue. Second reason is that the process you're following is a really unique way of using a cross-section of the population to dig into a policy area. So as someone responsible for giving policy advice to ministers, what I was always frustrated about was whether we were actually capturing the voice of ordinary citizens. We'd hear from unions, we'd hear from employer associations, to the point where we could even guess ahead of time what they were going to tell us. It was so usual. There were no shortage of academics and other experts who were willing to give us their opinion. We try and look at opinion polls, but opinion polls only ask 1 or 2 general questions about an area. They don't go into very much detail, so that wasn't very much help. And, you know, we'd occasionally find an NGO that represented unorganized workers and so on, but they're few and far between. So I always worried that what we were missing was the general view of the population. We were getting a very narrow set of ideas and inputs. So that's the second reason why I think what you're doing in this project is important. It's going to add to our knowledge of what opinion is about workers' voice. The third reason is because this issue of barriers to workers' voice or lack of workers' voice is a true policy puzzle. It's what is sometimes called a wicked problem, in the sense that there's no obvious solution. There's no magic bullet. There's no one way to do this. And so as you look at the options, what's going to be very, very interesting is the kind of mix of ideas that you come up with. Because this is an area where, as I say, one size doesn't fit all. And so I would encourage you, as you go through the options, not to think in terms of what's the one best way, but rather what kind of combination of initiatives could government take to improve the ability of workers to give voice, to lead to a more dignified way of working and more decent workplaces. So let me just finish by saying, let's be realistic. Governments are not waiting with bated breath for your report, and they're going to jump on it right away and start passing legislation. So think back to what Richard said a few minutes ago about construction. This is an important building block toward real social change and change in the workplace. And that's why I think what you're doing is incredibly invaluable. So thank you again for your participation, and I wish you well in your deliberations today and in the rest of the project. Thank you.